Hello there. Happy Monday. We are live. We're going to start a conversation in just a moment as people are joining on. A conversation about feeling really stuck in stress, feeling like no matter what you try, you continue to feel overwhelmed, burned out, that there are things that drive that. That's what I want to really share with you tonight, is that there are things that drive that stuckness, that feeling of always being stressed. And it obviously affects your health. It affects how happy you feel in life. It affects your relationships. It affects everything. So I just want you to really listen to this conversation as you join in. Say hello, please, as you do, and where you're from. I would love to know. But listen to it from, how does that apply to me? How does that actually make sense when I look at it through the lens of my life? Okay. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them as well. So if you're listening live or if you check out the replay later, my name is Linda Downey. I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, a transformational health coach with a strong training and practice of spirituality in the work that I do with my clients. And I really specialize on working with women who feel stressed, overwhelmed, burned out, have chronic health issues that they can't really get any traction on or reverse. They're just sort of stuck in taking prescriptions or just feeling burned out and stuck in life generally. So that's who I am. That's my background. And as I said, tonight's conversation, which is streaming in multiple places. So if I don't see your comment or question or just hello in the moment, I will definitely go back later. But tonight's conversation is about what are the background issues that could be at play and probably are at play in your experience of life as a constant source of overwhelm, something that you're forever coping with. Okay. So what I really want to point out right at the get-go is that a lot of what drives us in feeling like we have to do more, we have to work harder, we have to be perfect, or if we're not going to be perfect, we're just going to be the one who shows up the hardest, or it's all on us. We can't rely on other people. All of those things are things that keep us kind of on a hamster wheel. But those things come from background issues in our life that not everybody has, believe it or not. And it probably just feels like normal to you, or doesn't everybody feel this way? But it's not the case. So the background things that I'm talking about are three. I'm going to narrow it down to three basic, what we call core wounds. So these are core, meaning at the center of, at your core, wounds that happen very early in our life. And then that wounding, as a result, keeps us seeing life in a particular way and keeps us choosing behaviors that have us feel very overwhelmed and get us to the point of burnout. So let me go over those three core wounds first for you, okay? The first one, and this is true for every human being, these are things that we all need, no matter who we are, no matter what culture we're from, what race we are, what gender we are, it doesn't matter. As a human being, we all need these. And the first one is unconditional love. Just really, especially up until the age of 7, 8, 9, really getting the message that we are loved unconditionally. And it may be that you look back on your childhood and go, I had a pretty good childhood. Yeah, my parents loved me. And I'm sure if you're thinking that that's true. But what a child experiences that feels very conditional and feels like maybe they don't love me, or maybe they're not loving me in this moment, is very real, even for those of us who had really great, normal childhoods. So it could be something like, I can't believe you did that. Why would you do that? I know you know better. I know I taught you better. Or even for younger children, sometimes parents will say, no, 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 you're not going to be a bad girl and do that. Or no, good boys don't ever do that. So even if it's delivered nicely, and it's a way of trying to motivate children or steer them in a better direction, a lot of times the message is, if you're not this way, then you're not good, or you're not even lovable. So sometimes when parents are even more aggravated, like just go in your room. I can't even look at you right now. I can't believe you did that. Just go in your room. Something like that. It really feels like we're not being loved. And I get it. People are human beings, right? Like sometimes you're not really feeling love in the moment when somebody's aggravated you. So this is not meant to put any pressure or blame on anybody, but I just want you to look in your life, how often were those kinds of messages present? And that's the first one. That's a core wound. That is for children, something that really hurts them in their spirit. And so what will come of all three core wounds is striving. If I just be better, the decision that we make when we're 4 or 5, but if I just be better, then mom won't say that to me anymore. Then dad won't get aggravated and, they won't have a fight over my behavior, something like that. So that is in the background that then drives us in our choices for decades. Decades later, we are still trying to hustle for that feeling of we can be loved unconditionally. And mostly we only get it from our dogs, that unconditional love, right? People can be very conditional in how they give love. So what happens is, once you have that experience and you sort of make that interpretation in your brain, or you make your mind up like, I guess I'm not going to be loved all the time unless I do it perfectly, unless I be better, whatever it is. And now it's very hard for the brain to give that up. So when we get into our 20s and our 30s, and then we're in relationships, or we're just looking for approval at our job, looking to move up and to get that, great recommendation from our boss, whatever it is, that in the background, that core wound is always there. Okay, so that was one of them. The second one is, I need to know that I'm significant. I need to know that I matter, and how I feel matters. And that's a very important one, again, especially when we're young. But if you have a household, so remember I said, look at this through your life, go back into your childhood and just look. If you had a household where maybe there was 4 or 5 kids, and there just wasn't enough resources to go around to, if somebody was upset or having a bad day or crying, it was kind of like, we got to go, like, get over it. We got to go. Or I'll give you something to cry about. That was one my dad used to say all the time. I'll give you something to cry about if you want to cry, which meant the thing I was crying about was clearly not important enough. And the whack that he was threatening to give me, which he never did, but he would say that would be more important. So the message is, the way I'm feeling right now is not important. And sometimes even it's not even crying, but again, if you're kind of lost in the shuffle of a lot of kids, or you're the youngest, the last one, and you just always have to go with the flow, and you just learn you have to go with the flow. So you keep your mouth shut because the household already seems stressed out enough, then that's what happens. That becomes a core wound. And it's, again, no blame or responsibility. It's not like, anybody's purposely trying to hurt someone else, or it's just, it's just how life is. But for a child, it's a big deal. It does cause core wounding. And so that kind of interpretation is going to have people do things like, I'll just keep my mouth shut and go with the flow, because that's what I did when I was little. Oh, hi, cats too. Okay, so people have been on, and I'm just getting the messages now. Thanks, Michelle and Carla. Hi, Carla from West Virginia. Yes, cats too. I mentioned before dogs. That's where we get our unconditional love, but also from cats for sure. But so that one, that, you know, am I important? Are my feelings important? That can just with, you know, busy schedules or full households, or just if there's stress in the house, but kids kind of learn, I can't add to the stress, or I better take care of this myself, because my saying that I'm not okay or my crying isn't really being taken care of. So I'm just going to shove that down, and I'm going to just handle things myself. And then that becomes a pattern for decades. So 30, 40 years later, we're exhausted and overwhelmed because, number one, we have a ton of shoved down emotions, which could be a whole nother conversation. But what I'll just say for tonight's conversation is those emotions that never got expressed, I call it their 15 minutes of fame. Emotions just want to be expressed, show up, get their 15 minutes of fame, and then they'll move through. But we have messaging that certain emotions are not okay, right? Like a lot of people are very uncomfortable when somebody is sad around them or in grief. We don't know what to do. So we kind of try to talk through it, or, you know, don't be sad, it'll be okay. Well, no, maybe they need to be sad for a little while, for as long as they need to be. Or anger, especially like girls. I think little boys are taught, boys don't cry, suck it up. Girls are taught, don't be angry. You're not a nice girl if you're angry. You need to make it be okay for people. So there's that messaging there. And if nobody really teaches you how to process out those emotions, those stored emotions stay there. So that is going to contribute to a constant experience of stress and overwhelm, because those emotions are still in you. Emotions are energy. Energy never gets destroyed, right? You know that from high school. Energy never gets destroyed. It just can change form, right? But all of the energy available to us, the universal energy, it has always been, it will always be, it's everything. And it never gets destroyed. So if we don't learn how to move it out and transmute it into something else, or allow it to leave our body, it's in there. And that's causing a lot of pressure on the nervous system. That keeps the nervous system turned on. That keeps the nervous system in fight or flight. Okay. And then the third core wound, just to keep it in the context of this conversation, the third core wound is, so what did I do? Am I loved unconditionally? Am I significant and important? And is it secure in the house? Do I feel secure? So safety. As human beings, the number one thing we are most concerned with is safety. It's just what it is to be human, is to be worried about safety. And throughout, since there have been humans on the earth, we've had to worry about safety. Like, are we safe from the elements? Are we safe from predators? Are we safe from each other? It's just a constant, you know, background that people are always mapping life onto. Am I safe? So if you grew up in a household where it wasn't safe, now let me qualify that. Maybe you personally were safe. I'm not saying anybody was, you know, threatening you physically, or maybe they were. Maybe it wasn't safe for you physically, and that's obvious if you think about it. Or maybe that wasn't happening, but you just had a sense that in your household it wasn't safe because maybe your parents argued a lot. So they just had issues in their marriage. They didn't have tools to deal with that well, and they argued a lot. And so you would lay in bed and listen to the arguments and think something bad's going to happen. I can feel It's bad energy. Something's bad's going to happen. I don't feel safe. Or maybe there were just circumstances like a single parent household or an alcoholic household or any addiction. Really, any addiction. Could be a shopping addiction. Addiction is addiction. It's somebody's way of dealing with their own pain when they don't have the tools to deal with their own pain. So could be addiction in your house, could have been a single parent household, could be money issues, could be like in my household, not growing up, my household as an adult, my daughter was very sick and in the hospital most of her life. I know my son, he was 2 when she was born. So when he was 2 and 3 and 4 and she was going to the hospital and we were rushing to the hospital, he had a very strong sense of something's not okay. Mommy's not okay. She's crying. Daddy's not okay. Like it wasn't okay in our household. So we had to do a lot of repair and healing that, because that is a core wound. So when you have that core wound, your perspective of life is life isn't safe. It's not going to work out okay. I need to be on my guard. That might be one where I need to do it myself. I need to do it myself because when I was little, the adults in my household couldn't handle it. They were either always fighting or they were upset or we always had money issues. So I stepped up and I figured out I have to take care of myself. Oh, and I was only 7 years old when I did that. I'm just giving an example. But then that carries on through decades. So that creates a life perspective of life isn't safe. I have to do everything myself. I can't trust things are going to work out. Those are all life views that come from beliefs that you created when you were little, but they all keep you stuck in stressed and overwhelmed now. So it really doesn't matter what the actual circumstances of your life are. It really doesn't matter if you have enough money or not enough money. You're still going to be worried about it, even if you have enough. It doesn't matter if your schedule is, not overflowing and you have a good job. You're still going to feel like you have to do more. I have to show up more. I have to be the last one to go home. I have to do the extra work. It all comes from that core wounding. So those are the 3 main core wounds that as children, if we experience them, and honestly, I can't imagine that anyone does not experience at least one of them. It just is what it is, right? But the good news about that is you can, once you recognize it, you can heal that. You can actually do what it takes to change that life perspective. It takes something. It's not just like, oh, today I'll change, because the brain, once it decides something, it wants to hold on to that. So you have to do some work on rewiring, and you have to teach your nervous system, which has been triggered on, how to shut off, all of that. But it is possible. You don't have to stay in that triggered on place, because you've probably noticed if this conversation interested you, it's because you've noticed it really doesn't matter what the job is. It really doesn't matter who the relationship is with. It really doesn't matter whether I was in college or now I'm 25 years in the job market. I still feel the same way in my life, or the circumstances show up very similarly. And that's why, because the common denominator is you and your original experiences and how you related to them and how you perceive them. And that perception is carrying with you, you're carrying it into every job and relationship ongoingly since then. Okay, until you learn how to actually dismantle that. So, and that's the work that I do. If you've been following me, if you're in, I don't know wherever you might be seeing this, but if you're in my group or on my page, you'll see as I share different client experiences that people say things like, my whole life changed. It's kind of like going from watching a black and white TV to watching a TV in color. It's like, whoa, like I actually can see things in a completely different way that I didn't have before. as a possibility to see things in that way. And I can release some of these beliefs. So if you have any questions, like how do you do that, or any comments about your own life, please drop them. I'm happy to go back later and answer them. But if you really are feeling like you've been stuck in that kind of experience, I just want you to know it's not about time management. It's not about delegating better. It's not about maybe I need to leave this job and go get another job. I can't do this job anymore, because it's going to show up in the next job. I had a client last fall who was a hospice nurse. And when she called me, she was ready to leave her job. Like, I am done. I cannot do this. This is draining me. I have no life. I'm exhausted. My marriage is affected. And probably 7 weeks into our work together, typically there's a lot of ways that I work with people, but my main program is a 3-month program. And about 7 weeks in, she was like, I don't think I have to leave this job. And she didn't want to leave because she actually loved nursing, but she had so many preconditioned programming about how she was supposed to be as a nurse, what that would look like. And by the way, her main thing, her main core wound was she wasn't loved conditionally as a child. So what better way to get love than to show up when people are dying and to bring care and nurturing to people who are sick and to people who are dying and their family members. Like, you're just going to get love when you show up that way. So that was her hustle to keep every day, get some validation that she was loved. So that's another place to look. Like, what do you choose in your life? Are you always trying to fill the wounding from one of those 3 issues? Are you trying to feel important and significant? Are you trying to prove that you are lovable? And are you doing something to feel safe? That might look like you're in a job that you hate. You hate it, but you have such an issue around safety that you won't stop and choose and find something else, because you'd rather be safe hating what you're doing than maybe take a chance on something else that's unknown, where you're not going to feel safe, maybe during a transition, but you'd be happy if you were able to do that and make that transition. But the safety is more important. So you spend your life unhappy, but secure. And we can say the same thing about relationships. Not happy in relationships, but at least he doesn't hit me. At least I have a roof over my head. We don't talk to each other. We're not connected at all, but at least I have a place to live, right? So opting for the safety rather than what would really make you happy, because that core wounding of not feeling safe is such a strong driver and motivator. So, yeah. So I hope that makes sense. If you're listening, I always appreciate when you listen in on these lives every week. And if you have any comments, I love to get those too. So I'm just going to say thank you for listening in. I'll look later to see if there's anything I can answer for you. And I'm sure I'll see you again this week. And if you have any questions that you want to just talk to me personally about, or you want to know a little bit more about that kind of work, just because you're exhausted or your health just can't get better because you have these background motivations that you don't know how to get over, definitely just reach out to me and I'm happy to give you some information about that. Okay. All right. Have a great rest of your day, wherever you're at, rest of your evening, and I will see you again this week. Take care.